Juan Soto. The sweepstakes for his services really ate up a lot of airtime and column inches, and essentially the eyes of the baseball world were on him and where he was going to land. But let's talk about a little bit of the fallout and downstream impact of him moving this offseason and what it means for other teams that didn't get him.
Yeah, I think the first is the Toronto Blue Jays. You know, they saved up some money, and the Red Sox as well. They saved up some money to try to go after Soto. You were able to see the Red Sox reallocate it, giving Alex Bregman $40 million per year, which is a substantial average annual value. But he took a shorter term deal at a higher AAV in order to go there, as opposed to going to a place like Detroit. The Blue Jays have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as a pending free agent this year. They weren't able to sign him to an extension in spring training. They've passed what he imposed as a deadline to talk extension. And there's a lot of rumors here about the Mets potentially going after him next offseason and uniting him with Juan Soto and Queens. Both play for the Dominican Republic. There is some sort of rapport there. Now, the Mets have a guaranteed option essentially for Pete Alonso next year that he can opt into. They can't opt out of it, but Pete Alonso can opt back into it. So there would be a little bit of a goofy roster fit for 2026 if they do try to add Guerrero, because then you'd have Soto, who's kind of a DH, kind of an outfielder, Pete Alonso, who's a first baseman, but can DH, and then you'd be figuring out where to insert Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think Guerrero may actually play more third base this year. There's been talk about that, potentially moving him to left field at some point too. He's a big guy. I don't really see the outfield working out. Maybe third base could work out because he did improve drastically as a first baseman. But yeah, it's the teams who had to reallocate money who were going after Soto, like the Cubs, like the Blue Jays, like the Red Sox. The Blue Jays ended up signing Anthony Santander, Max Scherzer. I think they have a decent roster for 2025, but it's not one I'm particularly excited about. And as I said, given the fact now they're not really tied down to anything in the future, it's not like they have this core built around Soto. And Bo Bichette took a big step back last year, dealt with injuries. I think there's a decent chance if the Jays start slow, you're going to see those Vlad Guerrero Jr. trade rumors pick up like we saw with Juan Soto a couple of years ago. So Guerrero, probably the biggest potential trade chip on the board this year, and something I think is potentially likely to happen if Toronto starts slowly again. But yeah, beyond that, it was just teams having to reallocate money after saving up for Soto and being unable to land him. And the Red Sox went out and added Garrett Crochet via trade, signed Alex Bregman, probably overpaid for Alex Bregman, but there's points where your roster is competitive enough where you should be willing to overpay for certain free agents because those negligible gains actually mean more than they do on paper. So yeah, I just think the Soto bidding, teams were just left with money in their pockets that they were willing to spend on assets that they may have overpaid for, and may not even be positioned to be using them for as long as those contracts run. Like Anthony Santander signed with this team that has Vlad Guerrero Jr., but they may not be playing next to each other in a few months.